It all stemmed from one singular thought he had, beyond the passing of the madness after the asylum. It would really suck if I woke up in there again. After the nightmare subsided, after he finally achieved his new and ordinary self, that thought was like a kiss goodbye. It had taken him almost 2 years to get that point. 2 years to reach that final goodbye thought. And he got there and was able to look over his shoulder and see how far away that part of his life was. And he was able to do this without fear. Jacob Font had been out of the asylum for 6 years. He was an average man, aside from that. He had big square glasses that reminded him of his grandpa, and big brown hair that reminded him of his father, and a face that sometimes blushed and looked poofy like his Irish relatives across the sea. There was plenty of life wedged into those 6 years. Well, mostly the last 4 on account of a little hiccup period of readjusting to society when he returned to society. There were jobs, a couple of girlfriends, bonfires with old friends, family gatherings. He wore festive sweaters and held wine glasses when with family, and wore his blue North Face and held beer bottles when in the glow of the bonfire with his friends. He became an uncle not once but twice in those 6 years. In fact, it was the birth of his nephew Toby which might have helped him out of his readjustment rut. He saw an apricot-colored sunrise on the baby's dewy red cheeks. "Here, Jacob," Petunia cooed. "Meet your nephew." It was swaddled well, white blanket folded so neatly that it seemed to have been done by a stork. He imagined how a stork folded the blanket over and over again, over the little child so masterfully, so as not to wake it. "Take him," Petunia said with a smile. What beautiful exhaustion was on her face. This woman, who he had grown up with, had petty arguments with, laughed with, had just given life and existence to something. He remembered how she used to push those little plastic dolls in carriages when they were young. He was proud of her. Jacob took Toby from his sister's arms. She was aware of what he went through, and she still trusted him with this life. It blasted a sunrise into his chest, where there had been an eclipse. That black Aztec moon was defeated. It was an almost religious experience, holding his nephew. "You're a mom," Jacob chuckled. Her voice had never sounded softer. "I am." And though the hospital was stuck in a neutral scheme of sterile white walls, opaque white curtains, and Listerine blue rafters, Jacob noticed something familiar spidering in the corner of the ceiling. It was a dusty and vintage touch of sunlight. It was sickly, dusty, yellowish and orange, shadowy, almost like when you're coloring as a kid and the yellow and black crayons accidentally meet and make that gross color. "What's his name?" Jacob asked, to which his sister smiled. "Toby, Jacob Sanders." The familiar light in the corner of the ceiling subsided. He looked down into his nephew's sleeping face, and everything was okay. "Hi, Toby," he whispered. "Want another one, Jake?" Jeff, Petunia's husband, joked. She turned her head and laughed. "No." The birth of Toby and having that singular thought. It would really suck if I woke up in there again, worked together to open up the doors at the end of that long hallway, leading back into normal life. It was almost blinding, a kind of windy, push back your hair miracle. But normal life started quietly and slowly, in all actuality. He got a job at the post office and worked his way up from the mailroom, which was very similar to the mailroom scene in Elf, and became a good old-fashioned mailman. And he loved the neighborhoods he was assigned to. There was this old Asian couple that walked a lot. He always waved to. The man had a bumbling gait, like a cartoon character, and the woman wore bucket hats. They were always delighted to see him. He liked knowing people's faces and smiling at them. It was kind of like an inverted similarity to how Toby, was growing up. Jacob was so good with him that Petunia suggested that he switch professions or get a part-time job at the daycare. At first, Jacob chuckled off the idea, but eventually he got a job as a custodian at a little daycare next to a city-owned farm. Sometimes the traffic lights would break outside on red, and he would go outside to hold up a sign that read, "Light broken." He kept himself busy with his 2 jobs. He had to walk a lot as a mailman, and it kept him healthy and happy. He even let Toby accompany him on one of his shifts when Toby was 4. Jacob smiled to see Toby try to reach up and put an envelope in somebody's mailbox. Jacob did have one bad relationship, but who doesn't have one of those? Finally, 6 years in, he did meet somebody. It seemed as though every chuckle in the previous 6 years had been invested into this woman, unbeknownst to him. Her name was Jessica Bell. Jessie Bell. Her lips had a natural purple tint to them, and she had seductive eyes, a trait of her Eastern European heritage. She had dark black hair, contrast to her pale skin, which was bobbed. She made Jacob watch horror movies with her. He could stomach most of them. Actually, she would often have to turn and ask him, "That doesn't bother you," after he failed to react to unsettling scenes. He would give an uncertain pout and shake his head. Jump scares got him, but jump scares get everybody. She liked this unexcavated bravery within him, or that's what she mistook it for. Horror movie scenes reflecting in his glasses, his face stalwartly emotionless. Some mornings he had to wear sunglasses while delivering mail because the sun was so bright. Envelopes, letters, not for him to open. He had a strange dream one morning just before waking up next to Jessie Bell. He dreamt that he was delivering mail on a particularly sunny morning. It was a familiar sunlight. Yellow sky, as though the world was old. Sunlight restrained within a dirty lamp. He was walking up the front steps to his parents' house. Got to the mailbox. Oh, he knew his family was inside, probably in the living room, and he reached into his mail bag and pulled out an envelope addressed to his family from himself. He squinted down at it. Jacob Font. That was his name and handwriting all right, all in capital letters. The return address was like a little partner to the familiar sunlight. He paused. He didn't have the heart to put it in his family's mailbox. But that would also be a disservice too. He twisted around on the front steps. Nope, just his normal childhood road behind him. Where was he? He looked down at the envelope again. It became an anxiety-inducing moment, which seemed to last forever in his dream. He woke up, and Jessie Bell rolled into his side, giving a satisfactory murmur into his shoulder. Oh, she was having a good dream. He put on his glasses, even though it was still dark, and he lay there, accepting the solace of feeling Jessie Bell's weight against him. He didn't fall back asleep. Hours later, he watched her plop the blueberries into the batter, walking in front of a sink below a window. There were yellow curtains with bumblebees on them, and he enjoyed how it complemented her dark hair, how her hair was similar to the black fuzz on a bumblebee. Their kitchen smelled like their warm bodies and coffee. He was in a white t-shirt and his underwear. She was in a crop top and her underwear too. They smelled the burning butter, crisping up the edges of the pancakes. He watched the little excited shimmy she did before the stove. Blueberry pancakes. He loved when they had blueberry pancakes. That was always his favorite thing for breakfast, and he was comforted by the affluence of them in the cafeteria. Petunia called when they were eating and asked if they wanted to babysit Toby that day. They said yes. Jacob broke a blueberry with his fork into it, purple squirting across the table and splatting on the wall. They laughed. They took Toby to the beach. He was 5 now. He was on a little league baseball team, which Jacob coached. And Toby got confused on whether Jacob was his coach or uncle. Was it the sand? Was it the summer sunlight? It seemed that familiar color, that lazy solar color. That shadowy sunlight was trying to rematerialize. It seemed something was trying to skip a scene in his life or return back to another. It seemed as though he was approaching the next room in a dream sequence. The only thing stalling the process, his chuckle. Toby made both him and Jessie Bell laugh. Jacob's own laughter, gentle as it was, delayed some anesthesia that the familiar sunlight was tainted with. Am I dreaming? He asked Jessie Bell when they were in the blue darkness of their bedroom. It was just him and her in the sanctuary of their bedroom. The cigarettes were starting to get to her voice. No, she said indifferently. It's just... He was looking up at the ceiling. I had such a good day. I'm glad, she asked. She was ready for sleep. He thought about that dream where he delivered his own letter to his family. It was almost bizarre how dreamless his sleep was, how night just skipped right to morning. Their bedroom was filled with that vintage grainy sunlight. It had plumed like algae, but Jacob didn't acknowledge it out loud because Jessie Bell hadn't said anything. He thought that it was just a regular sunrise. The kitchen seemed less like the kitchen inside their house and more like the kitchen inside of there. The stove was still their stove, chairs still their chairs. But that grungy sunlight was throbbing. It was like a mold. Still, Jacob didn't mention it. Work became a good respite for him. Driving, autonomy, control. He had control and something to do. He had work to do. A good job. He had something to spend the day doing, move his legs. But when he got home, he really came home. He was home because the yellow sunlight hadn't changed at all, even though the sun was well in a different spot in the sky. It hadn't changed at all. It infested the kitchen. It was on the walls, ceiling, floor, making scared shadows along the cabinets. Shadows on the cabinets, like splotches and black veins on a sick person. Why did he recognize that sick yellow glow so well? Where was Jesse Bell? He looked around the kitchen, still in his mailman uniform, still in what the others wore too, blue uniform. Alone, he had ample time to investigate the presence of that familiar sunlight, but he couldn't figure anything out. He put his face towards the wall. Suddenly, he was afraid to step back and see the kitchen again, in case it wasn't the kitchen he was standing in. His eyes were wide, 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 wide. Did he shave that morning? Did he clean the bathroom yet? Where was Jesse Bell? The light flicked away. It was not dark, but shadowy, and now natural daylight filled the kitchen. "You left the kitchen light on," Jesse Bell said. He twisted away from the wall. She had shopping bags on her arm. "Just get home?" she asked, to which he replied as normally as possible. "I did. What did you get?" "Just stopped at Costco." His eyes trailed her across the room as if she was the only thing real in the world. Does she know how ordinary she is? He thought. How good and normal she gets to be. He was not unaccustomed to dreadful dreams, but the one he had that night was alarming. It was vivid. It was urgent. It was drunk with urgency. It was a miss your plane kind of urgent. A matter of sanity versus insanity urgent. An urgency of the soul. An urgency of the health of the mind. He was being wheeled down a sunny hallway by a team of orderlies with surgical masks on. He could hear the wheels of the gurney rattling rapidly. His eyes darted from face to face. Sharp turn down another hallway. Jesse Bell. He managed to speak upon recognizing the dark, pretty eyes of one of the orderlies. He blinked. She didn't respond, but she looked down at him for a moment. He looked beyond his feet. The hallway was dirty. What once were beige walls were brown, and that ruined the sunlight that the walls absorbed. It made the hallway a gross and yellow color. He panicked. "Jesse Bell, I can't be here." They ignored him. They wheeled him past a bald boy who was sitting and staring at the wall. They wheeled him past one of the dummies another patient put in their bed during an escape attempt. Sharp turned down another hallway, wheels tripping over something. He had to tell them he didn't belong. He had to tell them he had been long enough. But for whatever reason, they were going to keep him. That gurney ride seemed to last forever. He woke up and didn't move for a good few minutes. He wasn't incapable of movement, but he was too shocked by the dream. Was it a dream? Darkness had never been so reassuring before. When he could move, he cuddled closer to Jessie Bell. There was too much leftover adrenaline in him for him to fall back asleep. Oh, but that sunlight was back when they got up and had their coffee. The coffee didn't even work. Why? It was like the decaf in the cafeteria. He drank it anyway, because he remembered how he thought it was real coffee at first, when he first got there. It tasted good. It went great with blueberry pancakes. He worked, but it felt different. He was waiting to pull his own envelope out of his mail bag. He was waiting to somehow appear at the steps of his parents' house, but neither ever happened. Instead, it just drove him a little mad. It made him anxious. "Your favorite," Jessie Bell said when he got home. "Southwest mac and cheese." She was at the stove again. Spoon hitting the rim of the pot, wheels on the floor. He loved when they had Southwest mac and cheese in the cafeteria. It was there the next morning. Light. Photosynthesis broken. It only made him agitated. It only made him even more depressed. He was not absorbing and experiencing light the way a normal person would. Was it in a dream where Toby told him about the Kirkbride plan? He dreamt, or at least he thought he dreamt, that he and Toby, now a little older, were walking down the beach with ice cream cones, the packaged kind from the cafeteria. It was the Kirkbride plan, little Toby explained. "Aha, what's that, buddy?" Jacob asked. "The Kirkbride plan," little Toby repeated, stopping to lick his ice cream. "It was developed by Thomas Kirkbride." "Yeah? And who was that, buddy?" "A psychiatrist. He believed that natural light would cure the mentally ill." Jacob stopped, but Toby kept waddling forward. "What?" Jacob murmured. Toby was still walking. Jacob hurried after him, agitated. "What?" "So he helped people build hospitals that would give mentally ill people a lot of sunlight while in a safe environment." Little Toby said a little too matter-of-factly. "Who told you that?" Jacob roared. "I'll tell them. What's your name?" Finally, it came like the final chorus to a song, the climax of the dream. He was being wheeled down the hallway again. Jessie Bell was one of the orderlies, just like before. He woke up next to Jessie Bell, clinging to her for reassurance. He wished she could wake up and not have a mask on. He wished she would wake up and pet his hair. One of these times, he would dream that she saves him. He had the day off, and it was quite the day to have off because of how that dream of Toby lingered in his psyche. It felt so recent that their ice cream hadn't even melted yet. Jessie Bell was shopping while he was at the kitchen table, remembering his dream. He almost wanted to call his nephew and shout at him. How did you know that? In his mental digging, he uncovered a memory of how obsessed he became with asylums while he was readjusting to normal life. Quickly, he took out his phone and Googled the Kirkbride plan. Of course, he had read about it years ago. He took a deep breath. What a revelation. He ran out onto his front lawn, out where all the world could see him, though there was nobody outside, and he looked up into the sun, absolutely unafraid. It was a real windy push-back-your-hair moment. It was as though the sun itself was at the end of the hallway he was being wheeled down. Oddly enough, Jessie Bell had a spontaneous change of heart after that. He could not explain it at all. She broke up with him and left, but the familiar sunlight still materialized in the kitchen, in the bedroom, in the bathroom, even in the hallway of his house. Now he lived alone. Like before, he became capable of acknowledging the familiar sunlight without alarm. Was it that the monster had been unmasked? Was it that he remembered when he first held Toby? Was it that not him, but time itself, was reminded that had been a long ago, and that it should stop bothering him with it? Was it that he actually got some good sunlight one day while delivering mail? Or did he just laugh at it again? Either way, the dream stopped again, and he fearlessly took Toby out to get ice cream and tell him that he wouldn't be seeing Auntie Jessie Bell again.